Hey everyone, Magic Sword here, and I slipped in a little bit, so we're gonna get right into it because we have more cards than I bargained for, and we're also gonna be doing them in reverse release order because that's the order they end up appearing on the site, loosely. So let's start off with this new Pirate Warrior card, Shiver Their Timbers. Which is a great name. 1 mana, deal 2 damage to a minion. Okay, so it's got that pretty standard, sword and board type deal. But if you control a pirate, deal 5 instead, right? So this is going to be great for pirate warrior, or potentially even just menagerie warrior, right? In a more aggro deck like pirate warrior, you're concerned with breaking through their taunts, so you do with this 1 mana 5 damage, right? That's very powerful. I could see this seeing play in either, again, Menagerie or well, definitely Pirate, probably Menagerie, because they run more than just the guy with taunt, right? Um, or if they do, I don't have the list fully memorized. Never really occurred to me to play it. So, right, we'll see what pirates we get this expansion. I imagine we'll get a few. Um, but that is True for their timbers. I think it's overall a very good card. Lots of flexibility there. So, oh, okay. What you know? What we're going in reverse release order entirely now. Just I can just click that arrow. Okay. Park Panther, little pink panther pun. I like it. So 4 mana 4/4 with rush. Whenever this attacks, give your hero +3 attack this turn. This reminds me of Savage Combatant from um the tournament, the grand tournament, because similar stat line. Instead of a 5/4, it's a 4/4, and instead of inspire, it's on attack, right? And instead of +2 attack, it's +3 attack, which is a big difference. That's the biggest difference here, right? It gives your hero +3 attack. The idea before, I guess, was that you have to use your hero power, which already gives you +1, so you're already at 3 anyway. But this, not having that hero power requirement is huge, right? And the fact that it has rush and it's an on attack effect, you're automatically gonna get that to go off. Um, This is a very strong card. It might even this would be like a finisher for a zoo style um, druid deck, a minion based druid deck, I should say, because arguably spell druid is a zoo deck, but um, I really like this. I don't know if it'll see play. Um, this seems like a good enough card that it'll sneak in if there's an archetype that is supported or that would support this card, but overall I don't see anything like it doesn't fit into any current archetypes, and um we've seen those get some support so far, so I don't know. It's unclear where this will fall, but it's not due to the fault of the card. It's a good card. It's just maybe it doesn't fit in right now. Tiny toys, I love this. So 6 mana, summon 4 random 5 cost minions, make them 2/2s. So this is in line with that Treant card, right? 6 mana, summon 2 Treants, overload 2, give them rush. You can choose to do that overload, right? So this is generally more powerful because on the one hand, yes, those are totems and Treants, so they have those synergies, but nobody really ever took advantage of that. So potentially getting powerful effects from 5 drops, right? Um, think like Druid's Powerful Beasts or the like a Threshodon, which it's a 2/2, but it does have cleave, right? That's still 6 damage across the board potentially. It's a little underwhelming on a tiny body, but still good enough. Um, Twilight Runner, anything with stealth, anything with Divine Shield, right? Suddenly very good. You can get a Tinglon Ford Ring off of this, right? There are a lot of 5 drops that are pretty powerful. And then worst case scenario, you're getting vanilla stats. I can't think of any 5 drops with a. Oh wait, no, there's that one, the 5/7 that deals 5 to your hero. That's a pretty bad downside, of course. Um, but as with everything with these cards, they run the math on they like plug in like, all right, there are this many 5 drops, this many positive effects, this many negative effects, this many neutral effects. Um, and I imagine that this works out so that it's favorable to play it rather than not. That doesn't mean it will see play necessarily, because I can't really think of a Shaman deck that would want to utilize this. But um, I think that overall this is a very cool card, and it's going to lead to some real shenanigans. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of like the achievement cards too. Best in shell. I love that. So it summons this token, Gold Shell Turtle. It just looks like a zoomed in or like the layer with that turtle on it. That's a cute little turtle. So tradable, summon 2/7 turtles with taunt. It costs 6 mana though, right? So Druid, being the choose one class, loves flexibility, right? Tradable naturally fits for Druid, I think. So when you summon these 2/7s with taunt, those are pretty big walls you're putting up in front of your opponent, right? However, 6 mana is kind of a weird spot for this card, right? I guess it reminds me a bit of spreading plague, right? Where, spreading plague, you summon 1/5s until you fill your board, basically. So that's like way more powerful, but it's a problematic card because of how scalable it is, right? This, not so much. So summoning 2/7s, I think, is probably a weaker effect than summoning, however many 1/5s that you need, really. But the tradable effect makes it so much more flexible that it might work out. But again, this has the problem of the card before, the other Druid card, where it doesn't really fit into an archetype. Because Spell Druid doesn't want this, it's a little late, and it would be hard to play with other cards, right? You can't play this and Arbor up in the same turn, for example. You'd have to play it with Pride or with Power of the Wild, right? So I don't know if this really has a place. Tradable makes it substantially better because it's like if you draw it early, it's not a dead card, and if you draw it later, you might be able to, when you don't want to play it, when you would rather another card, you can keep digging, right? So the big issue is that it's just not supported right now by any of the current archetypes, and druid archetypes tend to have a lot of momentum, right? Like once they're created, they tend to stick around for a little bit until like a big rotation happens. So not super hopeful that this will be good, but tradable makes it kind of up in the air for me. Lothar, yes. Oh, we love Lothar. This is so cool. So at the end of your turn, attack a random enemy minion. If it dies, gain +3/+3. So this is somebody looked at Boogeyman and was like, hey, what if we made it good? Right? So 7 mana, 7/7, beautiful stat line, blessed stat line. Attack a random enemy minion, and if it dies, gain +3/+3. I mean, no, now you have like a 10, like 5 on the board. Huge threat. Your opponent has to deal with it. It's all but guaranteed to remove an enemy minion, right? If you're playing it on curve, there's not going to be a whole lot that's bigger than that. Nozdormu Day, don't play this card. It's going to trade into that 8/8. You know it will. They could have 7 minions on board and then would hit the 8/8. So this is really interesting for warrior, some sort of big warrior, or imagine this in current like rush warrior, right? So obviously it benefits from the hand buffs like a rush minion. It does not have rush, but rush is not the key synergy in rush warrior, except for with ETC, of course. So when the reason you want things with rush is because hand buffing is inherently just a slow thing, and rushing is inherently a fast thing, right? So when you hand buff a rush card, it gets to use those stats immediately, negating the downside of a hand buff. Well, this works the same way, right? So instead of plopping down a 7 mana 7/7, you might be plopping down a 7 mana 10/10, depending on what hand buffs went off, right? So this is quite powerful in that context. So the fact that it supports an existing warrior archetype is good in my mind. And I think generally that this could be powerful in future big style warriors that we don't even know about yet, right? So I have a lot of faith in this card. I think it will see play. Um, and if even if it's not like optimal, even if it's not top tier, I think it'll be good, right? Overdraft. I was really excited about this. So people have been theory crafting like what is the shaman, what is bru'kan's thing going to be? And I immediately thought it's going to be something to do with elements, but then we saw but then I was like, well no, the mage spell's kind of similar to that. So it's probably not something to do with like spell schools, right? So then I thought maybe it's to do with overload because we see him channeling lightning, right? Um so maybe in an overload world, bru'kan is like, you know, cast overload spells and then the final reward is your overloads overload your opponent instead, or they deal bonus damage is one I saw. Um, so this idea of unlock your overloaded mana crystals to deal that much damage is right on the money for that other idea. That was like a bru'kan reward. That was the final questline reward. But unlocking your overloaded mana crystals and then blasting someone, you can overload a lot of mana crystals in current shaman decks, right? If you um turn 3 lightning bloom a oh just kidding, you'd have 0 mana. I was gonna say lightning bloom a doomhammer, but turn 4 lightning bloom doomhammer, right? And then do something else with the leftover mana, or you could overdraft right there, right? um what a lot of people don't realize about these like unlock your mana crystal effects though is that they work on currently locked mana crystals and also the ones that are locked for next turn, right? So if you have 4 locked, let's say it's turn 10, you have 4 locked and you spend 5 mana and you overload like 3 more crystals next turn, you end up dealing 7 damage with this spell. Being able to bean someone in the face for 7 damage while unlocking more mana crystals and functionally making all those overload cards totally OP. I think that there are enough usable overload cards. There are enough overload cards that are being used currently. Um, that this is going to be very powerful. I could see this even in current Doomhammer Shaman, right? Because your lightning bolts, your that's not what they're called, your Doomhammers, your lightning blooms, all those overload you, and this is just more damage. This helps you finish out the game even faster. And of course, tradable is useful too. If you're like, ah, crap, I have a really strong elemental opening and I drew this, I'll just push this away, get the elemental ball rolling more effectively, right? What this would replace, I'm not really sure. We'd have to see more of the set to make that sort of prediction, but this is going to be one of the most powerful shaman cards. This is going to build an archetype, I think, potentially, depending on what bru'kan's ability is, right? And this leads me to believe it has to do with overload. So the last but not least, certainly, Varian, King of Stormwind, but not for very long. Spoilers. So, Battle Cry. Draw a rush minion to gain rush. Repeat for taunt and divine shield. 8 mana 7/7 that can gain rush, taunt, and divine shield, and also draw those 3 cards. So, this is clearly based on the previous variant card from I think it was the Grand Tournament. I guess it would have to be. That was the only other set in Stormwind, right? So Rush, Taunt, and Divine Shield. That is a scary monster. If you played a card that was 8 mana, Rush, Taunt, Divine Shield, I'd be afraid of that. Right? But on top of that, he draws you 3 cards, just like Varian did in the Grand Tournament. And so the deal with Varian back then is he drew 3 cards and minions were summoned. So the idea was it was like a big warrior card. Didn't really see play from what I remember, but it was a good idea. This has that like corpse taker effect where the immediate impact is it gives Varian these effects, right? So it draws 3. It will draw those cards. but then it will give Varian those things. So if you're running enough Rush, Taunt, and Divine Shield, the Divine Shield's a little iffy. Paladin will really like that. Other classes not so much. But everyone else will probably be able to run enough Rush and Taunt for this to work, right? So even if he just gains Rush, I think there's a reason they led with the Rush, right? Because that's the most powerful effect here. Um, you want and will most likely be able to proc the Rush um, the most. So I'd say in order it's Rush, Divine Shield, Taunt in terms of wanting it, and then switch Divine Shield and Taunt in terms of likelihood. Because in terms of like neutral Divine Shields, there aren't too many that are really good that a lot of people would want to run. So even if this is just 8 mana, 7/7 rush, draw a rush card, that's like okay. That's okay because it's the worst case scenario, right? You probably want to draw that Taunt and Divine Shield as well. So the fact that it's such a big draw card and such a big cost card means that this is definitely being used in a more value oriented deck. This is obviously not an aggro card, right? You want to be in your next game by 8 mana, right? So I think Rush Warrior might want this. They run taunts as well, right? They run that Pirate that gives you a sword, the 2/5. I can't think of any Divine Shields that they run just because it's Warrior, right? Paladin also really wants this. Paladin's not in a great spot since they nerfed them so much, and they deserve the nerfs, of course. I'm not saying that Paladin didn't need to be nerfed, but this might bring Paladin back into relevancy. It's cool to see a neutral doing that instead of a just like a totally busted Paladin card, right? I think the balance on this card is good because most classes are not able to take advantage of that, of all three, right? Realistically, even Paladin is probably only getting like 2 of these. And Warrior is going to get like at least Rush, maybe some other stuff. I'd love to see this in Arena. I mean, like, you might just get totally shut out by this card. Um, but overall, I think this is going to be a very strong card. Whether it will see a whole lot of play is kind of debatable, but being able to reload your hand in the late game with while generating tempo is always a plus, right? Being able to play a big guy, kill some things with him immediately, and then draw cards with him, always a big idea. So Varian King of Stormwind has my official seal of approval, and so does this video. So if it has your official seal of approval, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you think about some of these busted Shaman cards that we saw, right? Well, this busted Shaman card, the other one was okay. Tell me what you think about Varian and Lothar, because those are pretty nutty. And make sure you tell all your friends to check out this video too, so we can have a nice big discussion in the comments. All right. I'll see you later today with the afternoon reveals. Bye bye.